Let me get your opinions about some of the popular diets that are out there. And let's start with Atkins.
Okay.
What are your views?
Well, you know,
I mean, it works. People are losing weight.
People do lose weight on Atkins, and Atkins was a pioneer, and we owe him a great debt for bringing into the conversation insulin and its effects and sugar and its effects. I don't think the classic Atkins diet of 20 grams of carbohydrates for a couple of weeks going into ketosis is necessary or even all that effective. I think the emphasis on ketosis is probably misplaced. You can be in ketosis and still gain weight, and you can certainly not be in ketosis and lose weight. So I think that we owe him a great debt for bringing this conversation about insulin and sugar into the picture. But I think that if you look at most of these low-carb diets, they differ slightly in the amount of carbohydrate that's allowed during the first phase and what they allow you to put back in. But my view is a little bit different. My view is, let's look at what all these diets have in common, not just the low carb, but even the Dean Ornish low fat ones, where they're as different as the red states and the blue states. They couldn't be more apart. But actually there is some common ground between all of these different diets.
Where is that common ground?
The common ground is get the sugar out and eat real food.
Okay.
Even Ornish, who's low fat, I don't agree with that, and Atkins, who's very, very low carb, will both say eat as many vegetables as you can get down your plate. Don't count the calories, the carbs, the anything. Every vegetable is good. The more vegetables you can eat, the better. Eat whole foods, get the sugar out, and control your hormones. Those are common to every single diet program that's on the face of the earth that's any good. And that's what I like to concentrate on, rather than how many grams of carbohydrates are you going to have today, and exactly how many calories are you going to have. Those things matter, but they matter less than the quality of the food.
Okay, now low carb is so hot. What's bad about it? If you had to say something bad about low carb.
What I think happened with low carb is the media. The media happened with low carb. Okay. Low carb was an effective strategy when it was applied the way it was meant to apply, which is stop eating sugar, stop eating highly processed carbohydrates that drive your blood sugar up and drive up insulin and put you on that whole roller coaster. That was the essence of the material. What happened was that the food companies got a hold of that and started producing 8 million bad, horrible, low-carb junk foods that A, didn't work, and B, tasted horribly. Okay. And in my slide presentations, I sometimes put that up. I put up a slide that says what happened to low carb, and I show these about 50 of these products, and everybody laughs because they recognize them. Low carb potato chips and low carb pasta and low carb cereals. They tasted horrible, they didn't work, and they sent the wrong message, which is that if you simply get the carbs out, you'll lose weight. That's the same bad message as we had in the 80s when we said if you simply get the fat out, you'll lose weight. People are looking for that soundbite. Unfortunately, it doesn't work that way.
So what's the downside? Before we move on, I have other diet books I want to ask you about. Downside to low carb eating. If you had to say something negative about it.
If I had to say something negative about it, it would be more along the lines of the fact that people have made it into a religion rather than a strategy. Okay. By obsessively counting the grams of carbohydrates instead of looking at the bigger picture, like what's the quality of the food you're eating, how many calories, how much exercise are you getting, is this whole food, is it nutrient dense, how much fiber is in it, they simply concentrated on that one little soundbite, how many grams of carbs, and that's a mistake. There's no mistake in trying to cut the sugar and cut the processed carbs, but there's a big mistake in making it be as if that's the only thing we need to pay attention to. I outline this in great detail in the Diet Bootcamp program, and that's why I don't have them actually count the number of grams of carbs. We take out the foods that are likely to cause blood sugar problems. We eliminate those for a couple of weeks, and I give them very specific ways that they can do that. But there's not this obsessive counting of the number of grams of carbohydrates, because I think that sends the wrong message.
Okay, now what about the Zone?
The Zone is a well-designed program, and again, it's another way of trying to manage hormones. What we have to understand is food is information. Food sends a signal to your body to turn on certain hormones, and the hormones are like a big internet email system, and they all have little things in their message statements. Burn the fat, store the fat, burn up some muscle, build some muscle, testosterone, build some muscle, cortisol, break down some muscle. So Barry's program, the Zone, is really about trying to control that hormonal universe so that you build up a kind of fat-burning metabolism. And I try to do the same thing in Diet Bootcamp, only without being as exact about the proportions of carbs, fats, and proteins.
Low fat. diets.
I think that was probably one of the biggest mistakes the whole nutrition and dietetic community ever made, right up there with margarine. Clearly, we need fat in our diets. Clearly, fat is a very healthy and important part of our diets. Our brain is about 60% fat. Fat during pregnancy, especially from fish oils, DHA, EPA, some of the things I have on my website, the fish oil and the neuromins and things like that that are specifically meant for pregnancy, are very, very powerful modulators of brain tissue. So we need fat in our diet, and the idea of cutting the fat was just as ill-advised as the idea of simply cutting out all carbohydrates. We threw the baby out with the bathwater.
Okay.
There are plenty of cultures in which the vast majority of their calories are from fat, and they do very well.
Tell me this then, somebody watching this and they're on a low-fat diet right now and it's working for them. What are they headed for then, in your opinion, if you don't like low fat?
Well, it's not that I don't like low fat. It's that I think, again, any obsessive concentration on just one macronutrient, protein, fat, carbohydrate, to the exclusion of looking at the whole picture, is short-sighted. There's no reason to simply cut fat. Walter Willett, who is probably arguably the most important nutritional researcher in the country, has said that in all of their studies, the nurses' health study, the health professionals' follow-up study, they have found no relationship between the percentage of fat in the diet and any major health outcomes. So it's not about simply cutting the fat. You need fat to build hormones with, you need them in your cell membranes, and the better the fat, the better the health. To me, you're asking questions about what diets are best. I'd rather reform that question. What's the right match between the diet and the person? That's the whole gist of my
programs.
So
how do you figure that out?
You figure that out the same way you figure what's the right match in dating, in finding a mate, in finding a home. You look at who you really are. What do you really need?
So is that clearly your
That's
tape
all
program?
My programs are about exploring who you really are so that you can find the right match, not only in your dietary program, but in what you want out of your life, what you see is possible in your life.
So it's a strategy.
It's a strategy.
Do you think most people fail on diets because they have a poor strategy?
I think most people fail on diets because they look at it as separate from the rest of their lives. They don't look at it in terms of the kinds of conflicts that they're going to have to look at, the kinds of barriers they're going to have to break through, the kinds of things they tell themselves about what's possible in their lives. They look at it merely as following a strategy that is separate from the rest of their lives. You know, in Western medicine, they say when a patient comes in, we say, what is the disease? In Eastern medicine, they say, who's this person who happens to have these symptoms? That's the way I approach things in Diet Bootcamp and in all my programs, non-essential steps to weight loss. The first and most essential step is telling the truth about who you are, what you need, what you believe is possible, and then finding the strategy that suits you.